Good afternoon, everybody. This is Eric calling, talking from Runner EDQ. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We're going to allow for a couple more minutes to allow some folks to come in. We had a large audience today, and we're going to try to allow for a few minutes for some late arrivals, and we'll start promptly at 2:05. This will go for 45 minutes, and we will have a hard stop, hopefully scheduled for 2:50. And this will be recorded, so anybody that does have any hard stops or other obligations, we will be able to send this out to you as a recorded webinar as well. So thank you again very much for joining us today. We will start here promptly in a few minutes. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. All right, folks, thanks for joining us today for our presentation of It's Not Just Addresses, Complete Your Student Contact Data. My name is Eric Paye. I'm with the Runner EDQ Marketing Department, and I have the pleasure to be joined by Jean Chavanez here from Runner EDQ Sales, along with our moderator, Misty Wilmore from EDQ's Customer Success. Misty has already put out a message in the chat box to welcome everybody here. And we will be able to answer questions. We did a lot for a period after this presentation to answer any questions that you might have. So please feel free to use that chat box in order to put any questions that you may have. And we will answer those questions in the order they were received at the end of the presentation. So we do have this thing scheduled for 45 minutes. We will have, again, a period set up at the end of the presentation, along with, of course, any available answers that we have to answer those questions. Again, my name is Eric. I'm with Runner EDQ's Marketing Department, and thank you very much for spending your valuable time with us today. So a little bit about us. You guys are all customers, but thank you very much for being valuable customers. And I'd like to just give you some highlights as to who we are and what we do, so particularly some of the integrations that we bring to the table, and some, of course, the 20-plus years of experience we have specifically in the data quality and address verification solution area. We have a lot of daily users, as you can see, and of course the retention rate that we have is, proud to say, is a 99% customer retention rate. We do deliver on what we say we do. And again, I think as you see in our presentation today, you'll find a lot of value over and above what you currently have as far as Clean Address is concerned. Perhaps some of the folks here do not know that we provide additional data sets. And I think you're going to be surprised at the end of this webinar as to what's actually out there available to you in order to enhance and, of course, improve the contact data quality that you currently have for your students. So, as you can see, we have integrations into Banner, Colleague, Advanced, as well as PeopleSoft Campus Solutions and a myriad of other different applications that you may be using, such as Salesforce and others. So in today's agenda, we're going to cover some of the higher education trends that you guys are experiencing right now in your realm, and of course, how that's relevant to the data quality solutions and contact data sets that we'll be providing to you, and especially how that data quality affects the success at your institution and how it affects it institution-wide, and specifically how it will impact your student life cycles. Lastly, we're going to go over the data enhancement types that we're going to present today in detail. And of course, Sean will talk about next steps thereafter. So as we move right into higher education trends, we want to give a couple highlights as to what we were able to find through various research that we've done, either through Gartner or Lucian and other research documents that we've been able to assimilate here at Runner, because of course data is our realm, and of course we need to be very cognizant of what's happening around us, specifically as it aligns to higher education. So email is the #1 means of communication now in higher education. Of course, you assign a .edu address to all of your students, but the big one right here and the challenge is, of course, is what is their main contact email before they come to your institution, such as a prospect, and thereafter, as they become graduates, what is their personal email address after that? Of course, 97% of college students own a cell phone, and I do know that a lot of institutions do a lot of messaging and push a lot of messaging through that medium, of course, because it's instant and immediate information that's given to the recipient. And again, the big one here is 85% of U.S. college students use Facebook, and even more use Instagram and Snapchat. 40% of data errors are data entry related. And of course, that's probably something that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis from different aspects of your own databases. And of course, the big one here, 18% of population moves annually. So, of course, in higher education, the student population is probably moving more than the U.S. national average, and that is a USPS statistic. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover a lot of ground today and really talk about each of these particular points and how they are directly related to the contact data quality that you have. So when we look at the enrollment process and how it impacts the student overall life cycle, and of course the perception as well as their alignment with your university, we really leveraged a document that came from Lucian that was called Data-Driven Communication Leads to Increased Enrollment and Future Donations. This really aligns with our life cycle aspect and how we approach the student life cycle as a whole. So if you look at this one, 87% of students who received personalized communications during their application process agree that it was an important factor in their choice of school. That's huge. Think about the different means and ways that you're communicating with your students right now, or more in particular, your prospects. Again, this all relates to that student life cycle, and prospecting and enrollment in that enrollment process is the first step. So when you start looking at it from that regard, is how are you communicating? Is it through mail, email, phone? Are you influencing them through social media? How are these communications being impacted by these prospects and received by these prospects? And ultimately, how are you influencing these particular targets to get into your school? And the one that really reflects the way that you're communicating with your students after they're enrolled is the last one. Communication affects advancement. 95% of advancement officials believe they would have a better relationship with the alumni if they had access to more data across the student life cycle. Now, again, that's where this magic bullet comes into play, and hopefully we'll be able to cover some of that ground and how you can have access to some of these data points, not only from Runner, but other sources as well. We like to think that we do it better than others, but again, this is just to make you aware that there are a lot of different data sets that are available to you, and of course, we do it from a very different approach from the integration perspective. So did you know, we're going to put some fun facts here. I'm not going to put too much emphasis on all of them due to time constraints, but if you look at some of the ones that we look at here, Like, for example, 18% of the population moves each year, and over 70% of your mail is move-related. We're going to cover a lot of these things as to how you can mitigate some of these problems with return mail, and of course, how we can deal with some of the things that you may be missing in the contact data profiles, such as social media, and of course, where we can really use data, demographic data, in order to complete the profiles and even enhance the profiles that you currently have to make it much easier to target, market, and identify these population sets. So as we face the facts, and some of the things that you're probably currently using right now, for example, email versus using direct mail, is very impactful, because email has an average return on investment of $44 for every dollar spent. So again, that's where your CRM kicks into play, and having the correct email address is very imperative when you start looking at it from an ROI perspective. Now, 35% of the U.S. labor force are millennials ages 22 to 37. This is really something as we look at from a demographic perspective, because this does relate to the ability to identify, not only from the graduate perspective side of it, but on the other side of it too, because don't forget, when you guys are enrolling students, even prospecting students, knowing that data set and the population demographic of who you're bringing in really does impact, because your message is going to be a little bit different to really focus in on those targets. 88% of the 18 to 29-year-olds use some sort of form of social media. Now, we covered that at the very beginning of that aspect, but how do you get a hold of their social media handles? How is that contact delivered to you, and how do you get access to it without having to go through a massive effort? And lastly, 95% of Americans own a cell phone of some kind. Now, that's a Pew Research Center mobile fact sheet that we leveraged here recently to get this information. So enterprise data quality and the student life cycle is multifaceted. And again, we're going to cover this really quickly, because when you start looking at it from that complete life cycle perspective, you're now communicating with these students, as we like to look at it from cradle to grave, through multi-channels. It could be through phone, email, direct mail, social media, and other aspects of the way that you're influencing these students. And of course, ultimately, how they're influenced and impacted, not only from the time that they get prospected and enrolled, but during the time that they are at your institution and their student experiences related therein. Because ultimately, that's going to affect them when they graduate and become now constituents and start reaching out for donations. That does become, as we talked about in a statistic at the very beginning, that does become a very influential impact on whether they're going to gift give back into the institution's campaigns. And again, this is just looking at it from the different aspects and becoming very holistic as to our approach when we start looking at it from the data perspective. Now, everyone here in this webinar is a Clean Address customer, and thank you very much again for being a valued customer, but let's build on what you already have. Let's start looking at some of the things that we can add to your data components, such as international addresses. Did you know that we have international address verification for 240 countries and territories? Better yet, it's integrated into the student information system that you're currently using. In addition to that, we can provide you geocoding, that lat long of that particular address. And let's not just stop there, we can actually provide you the email address for those particular contacts as well. Now, as we start drilling down, let's look at the aspect of demographic data and identifying those population sets even further, for identifying them from the prospecting side right up over to the point of being graduates. Now, while we're at it, how about adding a social media handle, or how about 20? You can add phone numbers to those individuals. Again, we're starting to look at the full contact profile for this particular individual. And then lastly, we're going to get that change of address processing that's already integrated into Clean Address to upload and download that information so that we can give you the latest and greatest address for where these individuals are living. Because remember, 76% of your return mail is due to move-related issues. So we start looking at it from the prospect of the first contact right after being admitted. This is just a simple graph to really show you the impacts and the different channels that you're currently using to contact these prospects, going right up to the point of being admitted. Now, you'll notice the constant throughout this whole process is email. Now, you'll notice all the other variants, such as text messaging, phone calls, and direct mail, along with either online chats or social media, vary. They all, however, spike at the very end and that's after being admitted, because all of these channels now are becoming very relevant in the continuation of the communications with these individuals, not only from the time that they get enrolled, but right up to the time that they graduate. So today's webinar is really going to concentrate on what we like to call clean data. These clean data enhancement services and solutions are going to be very dynamic, and you're going to notice that there's going to be different impacts of how you can communicate and also how you can receive different information to accomplish some of the business processes or even analytics that you may want to have there at the institution for not only your prospects, but your continuing education for your current students, along with the impacts that you may have on the advancement side. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our Clean Student Bundle. We have a customer advisory board here at Runner EDQ, and we've assimilated all of those contact data points that they felt were the most important. So what we did is we bundled them together at a very, very small price, because they are bundled together as a whole, in order to deliver something to you that we felt from that customer advisory board's suggestions to come up with something that would be very useful and impactful for you as one package. And that's going to be email addresses, phone numbers, social media handles, geocoding, international address verification, change of address processing, and residential business delivery indicator. We're going to cover all of these shortly, indirectly, of course, including, of course, the other aspects that you're currently enjoying with Clean Address. So at this point, I'm going to hand this over to Jean Chavanez to cover the different aspects of what we handle for our data enhancement services. And he's going to take us through the journey and cover all of those aspects of the Clean Student Bundle and all of those other data enhancement services that we're going to present today. And again, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to pass this on to Jean. Jean?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I won't keep you too long in regards to these, but I really want to organize this in a way where you have a good understanding of what these specific appends are and how it connects to your Clean Address, and also some use cases and examples with some of our customers who had success with the data points that we've been able to provide with them. So the first one that I want to explain is the email append. And as you can see here in the presentation, is to add email contacts to your list. So what that means is that you are going to be receiving a list of corporate or residential email addresses for your records, and they are to be associated with the name and street addresses on your list. And this would be updated within your SIS data system, whether it be Colleague, Banner, PeopleSoft, with all that contact email information. And what that does, it enhances your email marketing capabilities. And I'll speak more to that on the next slide that we have here. Email intelligence. What this does is that it takes your campaigns to the next level. Now, just historically, universities, colleges, institutions, businesses, we've leaned on email marketing for years. And we're finding that just having that one approach of just sending information to everyone, it's ending up being a big waste of time. What we found in our study is segmenting your audience for personalized email marketing campaigns has been crucial to really have make a difference to the engagement that you have with all three: recruits, current students, and alumni. So modern student bodies, they're composed of many subgroups distinct from each other and in a number of different ways. So it's crucial that your email marketing efforts reflect this reality by segmenting the audience for its emails into distinct categories that can receive customized content reflective of their concerns and desires. And according to MailChimp, email segmentation can result on an average 14 more email opens and 100% more clicks within the email, both of which is likely to result in a conversion or recruitment over time. Now, there's no hard or fast rule for how to segment an audience for email marketing in higher education context, though some conventions will likely prove useful to most schools. A few common ways our customers email their audience are as follows. One is by the stage in the enrollment process. So looking at the different stages, we're talking about new prospects, prospects that have engaged with your recruitment team, those who's been already accepted to a course typically that they want to see different information. Another segmentation point would be by location. So to give an example is that you have your international prospects. They have completely different concerns than your domestic prospects, whether it be the visas, housing, language barriers, etc. And when you take this into account when the segmenting is advisable. So if you have the resources, creating that email content in the student's native language can prove extremely powerful to these prospects in that decision of joining into your institution. Another segmentation point is by interest. A demonstrated interest in a particular program or campus can be a great basis for segmenting into an audience. And it could be by, maybe it's the interest of location, or there's a specific specialty that your institution may have that you really want to hone in on those students who are interested in those. It's extremely important to make sure that you have those specific messages to those specific interests at all times. And lastly is by combining segments. So most students, they typically fall into multiple categories, and it can be valued to establish some combined segmentation, such as international students plus new prospects. So, with that possibility, you can approach segmenting in a very strategic way, and already having those accurate addresses and empowering, just adding onto it with the email intelligence makes it so much more powerful. Move on to the next. And next is phone append. So with phone append, to give the definition, is just to add phone contacts to your list. Now, with that being said, it's to add corporate or residential phone numbers to your records. It provides a phone number associated with the name and street address from the list. It updates the CRM with your contact phone data, and of course, it enhances your contact data. Now, one thing is that I want to shift that thought to our next slide, and what it is the power of mobile messaging. By the original definition of what phone append is based off of landlines. But as you know, right now, no one is really tethered to their phone lines. You have so many people that they focus more of their time into their mobile devices. Mobile messaging is just more efficient, it's more immediate, it's more likely to cut through the clutter than any other form of communication. And when your user base spends much of their day glued to their phone, mobile messaging is just more efficient. They don't want to go to their desktop to receive updates from the school. They want to be able to do this all on the go. And our customer, University of San Diego, they found that calls to action using push notifications, the mobile phones were 3 times more likely to be acted upon than those sent by email. They ensured that the essential information reached the students more immediately than email because the alerts pop up on the home screen and are read with very little effort from the students. And with that as well, within mobile messaging, you can segment that as well by interest. It doesn't have to be just one mass mailing. You can actually have a mass text to specific segments that need to get the specific information that they need from their side. And the use cases for mobile messaging, there's so many things that you can look into. It could be a matter of safety. Well, an on-campus emergency is a possibility that no one wants to consider. It's something that colleges and universities must prepare for, whether there's a power outage on campus or there's some unwanted person or people on the campus. Emergency requires an immediate reaction. And without a doubt, having those push notifications available to your student body is the most expedient form of communication. So with having that clean address solution already within your system and in your database, you have the chance of having the cell phones as well to make sure that your communications are, I guess you would say, it's grown more than to what addresses offer to the table. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is the targeted text. It goes outside of just emergency situations, but you can find ways to just boost enrollment within those lists and reduce the summer melt by providing timely reminders. You know, when you're leaving from school and you have your students out on break, they're not by their laptops, they're not by, you know, their devices that they use to do work. They're always on their phone. So just keeping those timely reminders is extremely important. And just looking into what University of San Diego has done, just to go back into what they're saying, is that they have a total enrollment of about 8,300 students. And they've always been on the forefront to strive to innovate mobile technology. And they found that 75% of their students opted in on push notifications when asked to. So it works. Students, they're open to receiving notification from their schools in that manner. And another aspect that I want to, just a sidebar, is that, you know, a question that some schools may ask me is like, you know, with specific addresses, maybe you don't get that student. But more than likely, students are under their parents' phone plan. So if not the student, the parents get that text. And then that text will go to the student. So you're more than likely, and rest assured, you're going to get those specific texts that you want going out. All right. So moving along is to social media pen. Now this adds social media handles to your list, and we provide the most used social media handles to the list, or matching the email records that you have provided in your system, and it updates within your SIS data fields with the contact social media handles that you see here on the screen, such as Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Tumblr, who knows, Snapchat. There's so many different things that students, alumni might be using and at the different stages of their life. Having the more, the better is always the best way to help engage. So when looking in social media pen for use case, I'm going to talk about Princeton University. Princeton University is also a Runner customer, and they're the front runner in higher education social media, with over 560,000 followers on Facebook and over 300,000 on Twitter. These numbers place it firmly in the upper echelon of higher education social media. They were an early adopter of Snapchat to engage with students. They conducted interactive innovation, helping boost student engagement while simultaneously generating content for prospective students. To give you an example of that is they had specific video contests on their Snapchat account where students were actually just showing their campus life and taking pictures of things and just showing that. And they would have these little contests. And what that did was not only connect themselves very well with their recruits, but it gave them a huge base of content for their marketing efforts. So it was a very intuitive way to start that movement towards more social media involvement from the school and to the other side, because, you know, looking at some statistics, 48% of students who apply to multiple colleges, they decided against an institution because of poor communication. And student engagement during the enrollment process, it's a critical factor that impacts enrollment. It's extremely important. And at this point, yes, we know Princeton as, you know, the Ivy League, and they hold themselves in the upper echelon of higher institution, but they realize that importance of making sure that their students are engaged by having active campaigns on their social media. So it's important that they have access to their social media handles of their students. Okay. So moving right along is to geocoding. And the great thing about geocoding is that you can locate your target audience to market your school more effectively. You can hold targeting campaigns. You can identify data points, business strategies, easy to assess data, And with that, we provide that lat long with for the addresses that you have in the system. And what you can do with that information is that you can actually visualize that, create heat maps, and really find strategic ways and strategic methods to effectively engage or even have specific strategies on whether it be, and just to give you an example, is our customer FIU. They have many, and I'll speak more to that in a moment, but as we said before, enrollment strategies. You can identify where your SAT, your ACT, other prospects are located in relation to your institution. So say if you want to help bolster a specific area where you find that it's lacking, you can use that information from your recruitment list to find ways to effectively engage. As far as contingencies, you can identify where student populations beyond the campus, where they are outside of the property. Carpooling issues. This is something that FIU has used the geocoding function that we provided for them is to help alleviate parking congestion. If any of you have ever been to South Florida and in the Miami area, you know very well the difficulties in parking. So they were really active in finding innovative ways to alleviate that, and they use that geocoding function to not only alleviate the parking congestion, they reduced carbon footprint and allowed students to save money by identifying carpool opportunities, which in turn, it's a win-win because you have that. And then also, this is a way for students to possibly even socialize with each other. Another thing as far as advancements, you can find out where your alumni, where they're located, where are your alumni moving, connecting with their language, speaking their language, so that you can help increase your donor participation. And lastly, student success. Outside of just where they're moving to, you can find out when they're coupled with the demographic data identity to identify household income. This is extremely crucial when you're looking for donor participation because statistics are statistics. If they're saying, they change over time, but when you have concrete data, historical data saying that a specific household are more disposed to giving to their schools, you want to be able to target them properly, and geocoding can definitely help you do that. And this is just a demonstration of what I mentioned before with FIU. This is something else that they've done with their geocoding information. They were actually able to create a storm surge simulator to see how much they would be underwater if there were a hurricane coming, where the largest storm surge would be coming. So this information is extremely useful. It goes beyond just finding students to come in and connecting with them, but it can be a safety issue as well. So leveraging your data for just sending mails, that's just scratching the surface. There's so much more that you can do with our solution and the data enhancements that we provide to as well. Now, moving into international address, as you know already, we're in a globalized society, and fortunately for us, in North America, we have some of the latest and the greatest, the largest institutions of higher learning, and we're having students from all walks of life in all parts of the world coming into the United States. And what we're finding historically is that there's always been an issue for verifying addresses. As you know, not every country follows the same standards as the USPS or the Canadian Postal Service. But what we can offer is a relationship to over 240 countries and territories around the globe to provide real-time and batch processing for global addresses directly into your SIS or CRM. And it automatically formats that to the standard of the specific country, and it works perfectly with any of your initiatives that you have going forward.
So I'm going to kick on the PeopleSoft. This is Eric again. Going to kick in the PeopleSoft International demo. We're using PeopleSoft Campus just to give you an indication as to how our product would work is from an integration perspective of those global addresses that John was just mentioning above. So we're going to choose Canada in this particular case as far as identifying the international addresses. Again, this is just a quick demo to show you how our product, using the clean address solution that you currently enjoy, works with international addresses. Now, some of you folks may already have this system already integrated into your current subscription, but some of you folks may not realize that we do provide international address verification directly integrated into your student information system. So as we look at this address, and it's Canadian address, we're putting in the zip code along with the baseline address, street number, and of course you'll notice that it identified Ottawa as being the city and added Ontario automatically, along with that formatting aspect that you currently enjoy as part of your clean address subscription. All of these addresses are done in the same manner as far as identifying that international address postal code. However, this is done with a web services call in lieu of the on-prem install that you currently have. Unfortunately, we cannot provide you that entire international postal database. It would just be too big of a burden. So we do make a web service call to identify that particular address in that particular country, while of course formatting the international standard delivery standard for that country as well, all while validating the address in real time. Now again, as John mentioned before, this is also done in the same manner in batch processing for your existing records or even for lists that you may have outside of your student information system using our product called CleanFile, which you also have as part of your subscription. So as we change the address to Germany, I think it's the next example, which is Deutschland, as EU. So as we change it, you'll also notice that in PeopleSoft particularly, it actually changes the page to accommodate the deliverable standard. It's a little bit different in Banner and of course in Colleague, but it works nevertheless the same manner as far as identifying and verifying the address in a real-time perspective. So we're going to put in our address that we have, Lutzel Plot 17. We're going to put in the international postal code that we have, and you'll notice that it changed it to not only format it correctly, but it also inserted Berlin as the city and gave it the two-letter designator for the state. Again, this is all done for the deliverable standard of Germany. And again, where we do the best on the perspective of the integration approach is we will format that address to the deliverable standard while, of course, validating it at the same time. Again, it takes away that guessing game from the administrator of how to try to figure out what this address should look like. And again, if anybody's filling this out from a self-service perspective, when you do the batch process at the end of the day or even in real time, it should have that same type of impact as far as validating, correcting, and formatting that address in a real time. In this case, we changed it to a French address. Notice that we're going to put in the postal code. Notice when we did that tab out, it automatically updated the city, the correct postal code, and the department, of course, again, in that deliverable format and deliverable standard to France. So again, this example, as well as the others, was just meant to show you that we do have international address support. We do have it from an integration perspective. And again, we've also made it part of our Clean Student Bundle, and it's included in that pricing. So I'm going to pass this back over to Jean at this point to talk a little bit about the change of address processing. And again, that moving population that we identified at the very beginning of this population, at this webinar.
Okay. Now, with change of address processing, you may or may not have heard of this before, but I just want to be able to stress the importance of this, of actually using this. What change of address processing, it addresses that problem of mailing to a moving target for both domestic and global addresses. And what it does is that it verifies who exactly lives at the address that's in your system. And what that does is that it maintains your data standards so that you keep everything on top form within your real-time solution that you have with us. But you also get that CAS certified report included for USPS discount. So what you're going to get when you're doing this change of address processing is CAS certified addresses. And what it does is that within that whole database of yours, we can make sure that we can have your addresses as accurate as possible, and we can do that in 3 ways. First is with NCOA, our National Change of Address. Now, what this processing does is that it goes back through and looks through the address in the past 4 years. And this change of address process is for residential and businesses. And it's pre-built for exporting, importing, and reporting. So it just goes back 4 years, and you're looking with the USPS change of address, seeing who submitted and who hasn't, and then you make sure that your addresses are up to date from that point. But if you're finding that you're still having fallout of not having the correct people who lived in that address, then you can go a little bit deeper with multi-source change of address. Now, this function goes back for about 5 years. Now, what's different from what has been done in the NCOA is that we're looking through a collection of changes, multiple. And what we do is that we don't look specifically just within the USPS database, but we're looking at the credit card companies. We're looking at bank statements, magazine subscriptions, catalogs, utility companies, anything that are, the must-have utilities and must-have functions of someone who lives in an address. This is how we dig a bit deeper. Now, with that being said, you still may have even more fallout for that. Perhaps you have a huge alumni base. Your school is perhaps maybe 200 years old, and you're really looking to make sure that you've covered all bases from alumni that have graduated 5 years to the ones that graduated 50 years ago. If you're looking into the latter, where you're looking further, PCOA, which is proprietary change of address, this processing goes back 35 years for addresses. In addition to that is you have the option for a deceased event. With that is that you verify that name and address if they are alive or not. A lot of times you'll find yourself sending alumni and news and newsletters and magazines to alumni perhaps that may not have been alive for the past 5 years. Who knows? But this is something that can be extremely important, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is what remains. And every time that you're sending something out and that person is not getting it because they don't exist anymore, it's going back to you. And again, with this is the collection of addresses is changed from proprietary. And again, we use that same method of finding out through credit card companies, banks, subscription, etc. So that is our change of address processing suite that can make sure that you have the best possible accuracy of addresses within your system. So just looking, just to put things in perspective, is the 12,000 students, the cost of inaccurate addresses. And I wanted to speak a little bit, this is just expounding a little bit on what we spoke previously on the change of address, is that let's put into the perspective of you having 12,000 students. About 18% of the population moves each year. And with that being said, the cost of one piece of return mail is about $25, according to Pitney Bowes and other studies. And this costs up to $25. It's from conducting the research, finding the right person, updating the mailing database, remailing, the cost of doing that. It gets expensive. So for $25, this is about the correct rate. So going back into that number of 12,000 students and at 18% of them moving, that puts you at 2,160 students moving. This is that moving target that we're talking about. If you're not on top of that, you have a potential hidden cost of $54,000 annually, and that's only for one piece of mail. So just imagine how many pieces of mail that you're sending out to in your institution. It can be 2, it can be 10, who knows? But if you put that in perspective, you can have a clearer view on how much that is costing your institution. Now, another aspect of digital enhancement is the Residential Business Delivery Indicator, or RBDI for short. And this is extremely important. This is verified delivery address type. It provides that validation of whether it is a business or a residence. And what we find is, our students, our student bodies, our people, we're a crafty bunch. As you know, higher education is becoming higher and higher. And of course, we reward our students who live in state lower tuition. Unfortunately, there are people that they may use another address just so that they can save money. So what this does is protects your institution from fraudulent activities from your would-be students, finding out if these are true addresses or they're business addresses. And with this indicator, this RBDI function, it supports U.S. domestic addresses, and it works directly within your SIS system. And we have other data enhancement types that can really just expound on everything that you use with Clean Address. And you can see from that point on who benefits from the contact data quality. Everyone does, but I'll speak more into the specifics of who. Demographic data. This is huge over here. With demographic data, we can provide up to 17 different data points where you can identify people within your systems and segment them, as I mentioned previously, on the specific messaging that you want to have them to know about, whether it's their household size, their political party, their occupation, if they're married, if it's a married household, and household income. This is extremely important. In a data-driven society that we are right now, it is extremely important to be on top of knowing who your constituents are and being able to convey the messages that they would like to hear and see from their institution. Again, going back into that DeciSaPen, which I mentioned earlier with PCOA, this DeciSaPen helps identify individuals in your contact list. This is extremely important. If just getting a DeciSaPen within your system now, I'm sure you can find a sizable amount of contacts in your list that no longer exist. And all that it does is help identify and eliminate these individuals from your contact list to increase the accuracy and hygiene of your contact data. Next is the date of birth append. Now this adds the date of birth to your existing contact list, and as a basic function, it enhances your CRM or your ERP contact data to identify population age sectors. What makes this important is just on the recruitment level. How old are your students? What's their average student that's coming in? How old is your average alumni member? These are things that having that data you can know, and it can provide a lot of different insights to any of your specific strategic marketing initiatives that your institution may have as well. Next is incarceration append. Now this is something that you can identify incarcerated individuals on your contact list and eliminate any incarcerated individuals to increase the accuracy and hygiene of your contact data as well. Next is SuiteFinder. SuiteFinder data enhancement is something that is extremely important. Many times when you have students, whether it be self-service or you're inputting specific address or student information, you find that you have an address. Specifically in larger cities such as New York and Chicago, or even Miami, where you have many high-rises, what it does, this SuiteFinder enhancement, it automatically adds the person's apartment or suite number based on the information entered. So if you have the last name and the address, the SuiteFinder will automatically populate the missing apartment number and suite number. This right here is something that can save your organization so much time. You can only imagine how many times that when you're putting in a student name and address and then you don't have a suite, you're just running all over the place to find out where this student lives exactly. And this is it streamlines that whole process by automating that function. So who benefits from data quality? Everyone, to put it simply. from the recruitment side, admissions, student records, international students, advancements, human resources, your finance department, even the infrastructure. Everyone benefits from the data quality. And the more accurate that you have it in your system, the more chances that you can leverage this data to, one, you can increase recruitment, you can increase alumni engagement, you can increase student engagement, even among your faculty as well. There's so many different ways that you can improve your institution with the data enhancements that we have right here. And these are things that can be done extremely quickly, and it provides a huge value to your institution as well.
So at this point, we've reached the end of the presentation. And again, I want to just emphasize that the contact data that we have introduced to you today can be taken as a bundle. It can be taken individually. And hopefully some of the aspects that both myself and John were able to present to you today will be found to be insightful and, of course, useful for you to leverage, hopefully in the very near future, whether it be with us or perhaps even other data enhancement providers. The gist of this whole particular webinar is to basically inform you that there are options, that there is a lot of different data sets that are out there for you to get not only insight on your existing or prospect or even alumni data sets to not only boast and enhance what you currently have, but also use these for business as well as analytical purposes. So again, really allowing you to get insight. And of course, the big one here is to complete that contact profile of not only your prospect students, but right up to your current as well as graduated students, to give you that full contact, or what we like to call that golden record, giving you the full profile, contact profile of that individual to really not only engage that person through various means of contact medians as we presented today, but also, of course, at the end of the day, become more successful and influential as an institution overall. And really that's the name of the game, especially when you start reaching out to folks for gift-giving donations and obviously the student experience and their overall impression of what your institution brings to the table each day. So again, we hope that the insights that we were able to provide here become useful tools for you in the very near future. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Misty, who's been moderating our chats and our questions, to basically give those answers to us, and then we can provide those answers back.
Okay, so Barbara asked, she said, are there any plans to validate U.S. postal addresses via a web service?
Yeah, that would be our hosted model that is actually currently being developed right now. Believe it or not, we actually had Scott, one of our developers, actually sitting in on this particular webinar. And believe it or not, this is right up Scott's alley, as it turns out. So I'm going to let Scott expound a little bit upon that particular answer that I just gave, perhaps to give a little bit more credence as to what's going on. Scott?
Yeah, we are working on a hosted model for all of our address verification and append solutions actually right now. But a number of the solutions that we offer through the Clean Address engine, you can access internally via web service now by using the Clean Matter WS executable that you've got living in your bin directory in your download. If you want to be able to consume it from something other than the ERP that you're currently integrated with. That's actually not a bad idea for some of the services that we do not have a way for you to access within your ERP. For instance, the geocoding location, our engine supplies it, and it's there for you in the Clean File and Clean Matter WS applications, but there's no place to see the latitude and longitude within, for instance, Banner or PeopleSoft.
Great. Well, really appreciate that answer, Scott. And thank you, by the way, for sitting in. That was perfect timing. Again, Missy, I'm going to pass it over to you for any other questions.
That was actually our last question. So we want to also remind you guys that in the event you have further questions down the line, feel free to email support@RunnerEDQ, and you guys can ask any questions that you may have about the data enhancement services mentioned, or maybe you guys have some suggestions of some data enhancement services you guys would like to hear about or to see if we can acquire for you. So definitely keep in mind that you can always submit a question, whether it's now or later.
Yeah. Last thing I want to add is that us here at Runner, we really want to know what your thoughts are. What did you think of our webinar today? And what we'll do, just to be, as we see that the time has run out, is I'll try to reach out, or have some of our team members just reach out, kind of pick your brain a little bit on what you thought of our data enhancement services. And if there's something of interest, hopefully that we can provide some of that for you as well. So I hope you've learned a lot here, and yeah, I've enjoyed my time with you as well.
Thanks again, John. Thank you very much again for being valued customers here at Runner EDQ. On behalf of the Runner Enterprise Data Quality team, I would like to say thank you very much. We will be sending this recording out to you for your review at your leisure. Again, if you guys want to send this over to some of your associates that were not able to join us today, we certainly welcome you to do so. And again, thank you very much on behalf of this team. We are very proud to have had the opportunity to present this webinar to you, and we look to have that opportunity to speak to you in the very near future. Thank you very much.